Your audio sounded just a little bit jarbled there. I just want to make sure I get them on our attendance list. Any of our guys.
Sorry, it'll be Joe Wade and Drew Hampton. They'll be coming in. Maybe Tucker off camera watching, but they'll be here.
You're still a little bit, like your microphone's a little bit off, but.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
I think it was the angle of the camera. It's fine. All right. So
I said it'll be Joe and Drew. They'll be in here.
There.
All right. So it is now live on YouTube. So Perfect. It should be good.
So we are live on all the mediums. We do have a quorum here present, so I will call this meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. on January the 25th, the year 2022. So we'll start with our roll call. We do have our now newly minted trustee in attendance, Trustee Alva Valentine. And do I have a member, David Tate, here?
Wait a minute. There you go. Welcome back. Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. And Secretary Brendan Betts is, of course, present as well. And with that, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for joining. We now have the approval of our previous meeting minutes from January 12th, 2022. Do I have any motions on the floor to either read those minutes or to accept as constituted?
Move to accept.
Seeing our move to accept, I will second that motion. I'll seek unanimous consent if David's all right with it, and we will go ahead and submit these onto the record.
Agree.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Now on to big and exciting news, of course. We have our township update. It looks like we do have, of course, our trustee, as well as our chief and deputy chief. It's been a minute since we've had everyone on one call, so that's kind of a big deal. So from the office of the trustee, do we have an update?
Yeah, so we do have an update. So obviously we had our firefighters back starting yesterday. So as obviously that's why we have Ed here on camera over here in the office from the officer's room. So that's a really exciting update from the part of the township. We're really glad to have them back. We're excited to get them working and helping us keep our community safer. And I know that they'll cover some of the firefighting stuff, so I'll leave that to them and the work that he's been starting since he started yesterday. So in addition to that, we've been working on getting insurance. Today we have it almost ironed out completely so that we can get the township insurance back up and running. In addition to that, we're working on getting them healthcare benefits. We think we can get started where we left off for last year when they were let go, that we'd be able to get started fairly quickly on putting them back on the benefit plan that they had back then. So we're working to get that established as well. And so we'll be looking to make sure to review all of that information and the breakdown of who's paying for what, the percentages, but I think it'll line up very similarly to what it did back then. I think it was 80-20, and then they also have access to dental and vision. So we'll still be reviewing that, but we're getting moving forward full steam ahead on that front. Additionally, we are still reviewing the township assistance guidelines. I know I told you guys that I'd try to get that to you guys by the meeting time. We haven't been able to finish it, but we'll get it here for you guys tonight. So we'll make sure to pass those on. We're working on Lawrence Township, and we want to make sure that we're putting in all the stuff with code. And we spoke today with the Mike Dole and double check some of the pieces to make sure that we have the right information on there and making sure that we're meeting all SBOA requirements when it comes to that as well. In addition to that, we're also working, we got the so we have a contract in it that we will be presenting to you guys. I sent it to you over today. I know we won't be voting on it, that you guys won't be voting on it today, but we sent a contract over. Mike Dole, he is a former SBOA employee, and he's moved back to the community. He retired from SBOA last year. He's working at Klondike School here right next to us. And he is, we're trying to contract with him so that he can provide us some services when it comes to creating the internal controls and making sure that our procedures are appropriate and that we're well prepared for an audit whenever that happens, and making sure that going forward, the township is doing things the right way. And we can't do as much about past times, but we also want to make sure that as much as we can, we get everything in order so that when the audit comes in, we don't have to pay as much out of pocket because we pay for the audit. Whatever amount of time they spend on it, that's on the township that we have to pay for. Additionally, we started talking with Calvin Hill about mowing contracts for the spring. We have, well, spring and fall, summer and fall. And so we started the work on that front, and we have that information. Part of it is we had the quote as well for the fire stations, and we're working to see with the department, instead of us paying somebody to do it, outsourcing it, we would be able to possibly buy the equipment, do it ourselves, and save us money in the long run over the coming years. So that's part of what we're working to figure out a game plan on, so that we might actually do the best thing for the township. And so we're working on it, and I know that Chief Ward is going to have one of the firefighters do the work when it comes to getting quotes and stuff like that. So we're working full steam ahead on that as well. Other than that, we selected our township hours for assistance. So it is, and they're up in the web, they're up live as right now. So they're 12 to 4 on Tuesdays, 12 to 6 on Wednesdays, and then 12 to 4 on Thursdays, and by appointment outside of those times as well. So those are some of the things that we've been working on the township side. But if you guys have any questions other than that, I know that there's a lot of stuff going on, so I may have missed a piece here or there because we're trying to get everything done. We're cramming a whole term into a couple of months here, so so there's a lot of work. So, but that's it from the township as of right now.
Quick call. Repeat those times, the times that were open. I have Tuesday 12 to 4, Wednesday 12 to 6.
And Thursday, 12 to 4.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Go ahead, David.
Angel, when I met with you recently, the township assistance box right outside the trustee's door, let me rephrase that, your door, is empty. That really felt good saying that. You don't know how good that felt. Can we put something in there indicating that we're working on that and maybe a number to call? Because right now I think that box for those applications is empty. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll make sure. I'm at the township office, so we can work on putting something up today. And so we'll be putting out the packets and everything, and as well as a rough overview of a brief overview of the guidelines and stuff like that, so that people have an idea, and documents that they might be asked for, so that we can help them speed along the process, so that we have everything in quickly, because we want to be able to be as helpful and as responsive as possible to the needs of our community. I guess on that same note, today we had the first township assistance applicant. So we've scheduled a time to meet with them. I believe Amy's meeting with them tomorrow. So, we're hitting the ground running. It'll take some time before we have the same volume as we did at other times, given that the office hasn't been responsive in the last year and a bit or 2 years. But we're doing all the work that we can to make sure that it is going forward. So, yeah.
Alrighty, so I think I'm seeing a close to our discussion on the township matters as presented by the trustee for now. Of course, I'll remind folks on that we do have a time for public comments as well. I will now invite our folks to give us an update from the fire department here.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, sure can.
All right. Just a quick run number update. We got the number together here. We are up a bit. We have.
Ed, I'm sorry. It looks like we are having some issues. Are you having issues hearing him too, David? It looks like we are
Can you
having
hear me now?
issues. I'm sorry, you might have to scream. Yeah.
All right, give this a try. We're up a few runs from last year. Last year we had 86 runs at this point. You still can't hear me.
Well,
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
more
Okay.
clearly.
Let's try it more straight on then. We're up 10 runs from last year. We had 86 this time last year. We have 96 as of today. 17 were fire, 69 were rescue EMS runs. As for a quick update, we did get started yesterday. Really just spent the day kind of digging through equipment, kind of refamiliarizing, just digging through kind of where we are. I know for the last year or so, there's just been a very tight hold put on the money, trying to keep things updated, keep things replaced, things like that. So we're just trying to work on a list right now of what those things are that we need to do to kind of replace some items or replace things that are broken, whatever that be. They've done a phenomenal job of holding stuff together. So there's not a huge list thus far, but it's just been good kind of being back in the building and getting everybody back in here together and just kind of reacclimate a little bit, spending some time driving through the township, things like that. So the first, or we talked about the mower project. I've got Derek Cook. He's a assistant chief cook. He's digging. He's very, very familiar with like that sort of thing, tractors, that sort of stuff. So he's kind of digging to get an idea, working on some quotes for something we can keep here that we can potentially have a blade on the front of, that we can maybe do just even our own plowing right out in front of the bays, that sort of thing in both places, take care of the mowing, that sort of stuff. Of course, we want something that's going to be heavy duty and do the job that we need done here between taking care of both buildings. So we'll have to get a quote for the tractor itself and probably a smaller trailer that we would keep here to be able to get it back and forth to both stations. So once we get those quotes put together, we'll get them to you guys and kind of we'll kick it around and see what that looks like. So the only negative thing that I've got is today, Travis Merkel spent most of the day here, but he went home after he had a COVID exposure at home. So, and we sent him home just out of precaution, just to kind of keep him at home, keep him isolated for a little bit. We'll get him tested. So he actually isn't due back on duty till Saturday anyway. So that'll give him some time to kind of get his test done and all that. We'll have an idea how he's doing for that. So again, abundance of caution with us all being here and exposing, having other patients that we see. We just didn't want to give him that opportunity to spread if he had it. So, but other than that, I mean, things are going really, really well. Yesterday was we had a couple pretty good runs yesterday. One was a cardiac arrest. We were on scene within 3 minutes. So that's huge. That's a very, very big deal. But we had a few runs today. We just, and really it's good. We've got kind of a good sampling of folks that are showing up to the calls and I think we're doing all right. So we'll see what happens as we move forward. If you got questions, let me know.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, do we have any questions there, David?
Chief, is that badge on your uniform say Chief?
It sure does.
It's damn glad to see that. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
We are so glad you guys are back. And I must say, in this very tenuous last several months, it's not just the board that stood behind you people, it's this entire community. So a big thank you to this community for standing tall. And in my 40 years of working with various organizations, the professionalism that the volunteers and you four people showed really exhibit the depth of your character. And we're really excited and glad to have you back.
I appreciate that very much. Very much.
Perfect. All right. Seeing no more from the fire department and no more discussion from our board here, we will move into a public hearing. So I, as secretary and presiding officer over the board, will convene a public hearing to consider additional appropriations of $339,918 for the firefighting 1111 fund, and to invite public comment from the audience, our folks assembled here. And so now I'll kind of open that up. Do we have any discussion on that? Trustee, would you like to speak to this at all? Of course, we've been kind of telegraphing an additional appropriation for some time.
Yeah, so let me pull this up here so that people can see it on screen as well. So if you give me a second. I clicked on the wrong tab, I realized. Okay, Chrome tab. All right.
Perfect.
Angel, you're muted. We can't hear you.
All right, I think I realized what happened. I was talking and it wasn't coming through. Can you hear me now?
Sure can.
All right. Well, there goes my Zoom mishap for the day. Hopefully. So if you guys look through here, you will see the proposed allocation that we're looking at. And this will go through the biggest issue, if you will remember previous meetings, was that there wasn't money allocated for the firefighters or their benefits or Social Security, PERF, etc. So we wanted to make sure that we were allocating the money where it needed to be, to make sure that we could run through the entirety of the year. This money will be taken from leftover funds, leftover at the end of 2021. As we telegraphed earlier, it comes out to just around $900,000 that we have left over, give or take 50,000. But we're close to the $1 million range when it comes to how we ended up the year once everything is done and the transactions are corrected, which Bill Jones has been working to correct so that the record reflects where transactions should have come out of from the different funds. A big one there being all of the payments for most of the payments for the township attorney came out of firefighting fund when they should have come out of the general budget. So that's one piece that Bill was correcting and all of that. And it'll be appropriately reflected on the annual report. So, those are some of the changes that will show up. And so that's why the flux and the range and the numbers that I'm giving you. In any case, given the number that we appropriated, which was $230,000 back when I was still on the board, we are looking to do an additional appropriation of $339,918. This is the amount that was published in the notice to the public. And it would essentially move money into the chief, the vast majority of the firefighter, part-time staff, health insurance, PERF, Social Security, unemployment, as well as some minor adjustments to the remainder of the fund. For example, medical runs, we included a close to 50% increase, as well as all repairs, we did an increase. Other supplies, we also did an increase. Professional services stayed the same amount. Utility stayed the same amount. Non-medical insurance had a small increase, given the fact that insurance tends to increase by a percentage year to year. So we wanted to make sure that we had additional money in that particular line item. We also did a really significant increase in fuel expenses that we are expecting. Just trying to make sure that obviously, like, the price of fuel has varied over the course of the last year, and it's significantly increased compared to last year. So we want to make sure that we're prepared to be able to pay throughout this year, regardless of what the price of fuel ends up being throughout the year. So it was a substantial increase there. The allowances stayed the same. And so basically, as you see here, it's 343,000, just shy of dollars being for the personnel services. You have the supplies, which is 71,500, and then you have 155,000 for the service and charges, and that's the line item budget that the trustee's office was proposing, and it's identical to the one that we, back when I was on the board, passed by resolution stating that the 2022 budget should have looked like. So those are the pieces there that that I have. But I am prepared to take questions if you guys have any questions or anything like that.
Seeing no discussion from the floor, I'm going to quickly see here. I don't think I'm seeing anyone trying to hop in there per se. I'll look it up in just another second.
Well, and technically speaking, it's also a time where the board can ask questions, because there's a little bit later, there's an opportunity for public comment. But I mean, we don't have to be that formal about it, obviously.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Trustee. So seeing none, of course, from the board, I will go ahead and note that we are in our 6th item of business for the night. I did not mention that previously. We do have now the next opportunity for public comment is our 7th item here. Let me go ahead and pull over. Trustee, did you get a chance to check the email address to see if we had any written correspondence?
I didn't see any written correspondence on the email. No.
Perfect. So I will open it up to folks who are joining us via Zoom, or anyone, of course, in the firehouse there with our chief and deputy chief, for any comments, of course, specifically, ideally regarding some of these transfers of funds that we're working on.
Yeah, and there is for just to add something there is also a public comment later on for stuff outside of the public hearing section. So
I'm not seeing any additional remarks from the public. So I will go and move on to what's right in front of us, of course, and what we have been discussing. Our 8th item is Resolution 2022-5, a resolution authorizing additional appropriations for firefighting. And obviously the trustee just kind of went through that. We just had opportunities to discuss, these major moves of funds. With that in mind, I would ask if there are any motions from the floor for the board regarding resolution number 2022-5.
Call for the vote, please.
Perfect. So we do have a motion to move to the previous question. I will second that motion. And I'll seek unanimous consent from the board here to adopt resolution 2022-5 as presented and as constituted.
I vote aye, resolution 2022-5.
Perfect. So with that, let me go ahead and note this in our here. Perfect. So with that in mind, I will now at this time, as secretary, move myself to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Perfect. We will now conclude our public hearing business. This moves us On to new business, the 10th item on our agenda, which will continue with the theme of resolutions. Trustee, if you'd like to get our 6th resolution of the young year pulled up for us. We've got resolution number 2022-6, resolution authorizing the trustee to make, and let me go ahead and flip my page here, certain recurring auto payments. So essentially, this legislative body would define what transactions are allowed to take place via auto payments. And so the process for approval does come from this board. Therefore, we are considering this resolution here tonight. The notion, I believe, is to pay for our Zoom meetings, our Google domain, and our Google Workspace and Office 360, just kind of basic tools we need to kind of run business these days. Trustee, would you like to speak at all to resolution number 2022-6?
Yeah, so so we have during the past administration, there were quite a few payments that were on auto pay. We're still working to cancel some of them to make sure that they go back to being like that we get an invoice and then we cut a check and pay it directly. That has been the recommendation that we've received, that it should be the way that things are done for purpose of SBOA. So like, for example, Duke Energy is something that you technically can pay online, but you should be getting an invoice and making sure to cut the check and send it and do it promptly. I think that we want to establish a process because this is something that the board has authority over, and making sure that there is board intent when it comes to payments that are on auto pay, for the purpose of making sure that it's in the right place and everything. So if you look through here, I listed 3 different categories of things that right now the trustee is asking for permission from the board to make automated online payments. That's the video conferencing services. Right now we use Zoom meetings, website domains, which are currently through Google Domains. And we haven't yet established which cloud computing service we will be using going forward. But the options are Google Workspace and Office 365. We'll probably have to, at the moment, we're paying for a Google Workspace. And that one has some of the documentation regarding the previous trustee, which we have to keep for public record and stuff like that. And so we'll work to migrate that to whatever end place we end up at when it comes to the workspace. But we want to make sure that we have board permission to make those payments that can only be made online. There's not an option to make them there's no way to get an invoice and then pay for it separately. It's something that automatically goes through. And then furthermore, I wanted to make sure that we're stating clearly that the trustee will request authorization from the township board prior to establishing any future automated online payments. And so that I think that that's important to make sure that it's outlined, and that both important for SBOA purposes, but also for transparency's sake and making sure that everything's working properly. So that's why this resolution.
Perfect. Any notes there? Yeah, Member David Tate.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Trustee, excuse me, on this resolution, which I would agree with, there must be some process to inform these that have been auto paid that we're going to request a statement.
Sorry, for request a statement from whoever we're paying?
Yes, correct. It seems, if I understand this, we're getting auto pay. So now what you're requesting, which I agree with, is getting a statement, a bill first before we pay it. And they're being informed of that?
So no. So it would be so for these options, there is only the auto pay option. And so we're officially asking permission from the board to be able to put these on auto pay, which is just a recurring monthly thing that comes out of the township account. And so there are invoices that you can access online and print off, like, the expenses and receipts of it for the workspace stuff and Zoom meetings and the domains. But there isn't, like, we don't get an invoice sent to the township office. It's just something that's only available online. And so we want to make sure that we're getting permission from you guys to do that. For other stuff, where if we had to go and do, and if there's something else that we have to put on auto pay, or that we want to put on auto pay, what we would do is we would request authorization from the board at a township board meeting to make sure that we are able to do that going forward. And so that's what this resolution states.
Thank you for clarification.
Of
Trustee,
course.
question for you. I know in my experience personally and then at work, Office 360, one can maybe choose annual plans or even monthly. Are you aware of what we're set up on? Is it an annual and therefore I think even a reduced rate?
So right now we don't have Office 365. The one that we have is Google Workspace. And so we are paying for it monthly right now. Well, and technically because when we got access to it, technically I paid for this last month. That's just, that's gone and forgotten. But going forward, we would put it on the township township debit card, and it would be getting paid. I believe with Google Workspace, you only have the option of monthly. And so it's $6 a month per user. And so what we are aiming to do as we try to professionalize the entire like workspace environment for the office is that whatever system we come up with, we would have each individual board member have an email on that system. We would have the trustee have that, as well as the office staffer, office clerk, and then the professional firefighters that, as well as possibly, and that's something that we can discuss as well, officers of the department on the volunteer side might be able to also get access to an account, and it's all within one professional workspace. Going forward, but we haven't been able to, that hasn't been the first priority as we set everything up, so we haven't worked on establishing that just yet, what the future one will look like. But it will be one of those two options, right? Those are the two big names in the professional workspace world.
So might I ask then, also trustee, under that scenario, how many licenses, obviously it's not something set in stone, we've yet to make that decision, but how many licenses would you foresee for that Google Workspace if we have, in theory, one for each board member, obviously the trustee's office, the trustee themselves, an office manager, the officer core? Are you thinking somewhere between 5 and 10, or how many might you think there?
So I think right now for this year, it would be between 5 and 10. Going forward, if we continue to grow, for example, and get more firefighters and stuff like that, it might grow. Right now, just to, while we're on it, that money comes out of general fund, right? But I think going forward, if we continue to expand, we're going to make sure that on the fire department side, we also add expenses that are fire related and whatnot. So there's still some improvement to do for the budget for future years to come. But for right now, it'll be 10 or so. And then going forward, if we add more.
Oh, trustee, did you mute purposely there?
Oh yeah, I muted at the end of that statement. Sorry, we can't hear you very well, Ed.
Sorry, I just said whatever users would come from the fire department side, that we would absorb the cost of those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. So again, we are reviewing our resolution 2022-6 to authorize some of these explicit auto payments to be established, and to kind of resolve, of course, that in the future we'll follow the process for good procedural necessity with the LGF and SBOA funds. So with that in mind, and having seen some discussion from the board, I'll just kind of see one more time. David, do you have any kind of closing questions, or are there any motions on the floor then for resolution 2022-6?
Call for the question.
Perfect. I will second that, and I'll seek unanimous consent for resolution 2022-6 to authorize those auto payments.
I vote aye. Resolution 2022-6.
I will also vote in the affirmative. Of course, we have our unanimous consent. So far we have adopted resolution 2022-6. We've adopted our Resolution 2022-5. We will now move on to our third act, Resolution 2022-7. This is regarding specifically grant writing. I believe we mentioned this last time. I don't think that was a private discussion. I think we had this discussion generally that we would have this contract come up to help us get the SAFER grant, something that, of course, the department would benefit from and the township would benefit from to help our folks out. So I know we've talked about it a bit here and there, but Trustee, do you want to speak to this contract with Greg Bavis regarding the SAFER grant and grant writing?
Yeah, so I'll talk about it briefly, but I'll pass it on to Ed. So when we, right prior to my joining the board in 2020, the township fire department, specifically Ed and the leadership, have been working to apply for a SAFER grant. Then COVID happened, and basically the direction of those SAFER grants got redirected to make sure that they were being able to keep currently employed staff on board. And so it changed the nature of the SAFER grant around the time that we applied, really, at that time. And so the notion of the SAFER grant would allow us to go in and hire additional firefighters and cover their salaries for 3 years. And as we continue to look at the possible expansion of the department to be able to meet the needs of our community and make sure that we have the adequate level of staffing for years to come, this is a really important piece of the conversation, right? And it also, it takes off the burden of taxpayers, right? We would basically be able to add staff faster and delay the impact of costs on the community, right? So it would be a really important way for us to be able to use all of the tools at our disposal. So obviously it's not a guaranteed thing that you apply and get it, but we got to do our utmost to make sure that we are exploring every avenue as we seek to grow our department to the place it needs to be. And if we save taxpayer dollars in the process, then that's a fantastic win for the township. So I'll leave Ed to do a little bit more explaining. Make sure you move the computer there you go.
Speak right into it, Chief.
We'll give it a try and see how much you can hear. So basically, Greg Bavis works for First Responder Grants as a company that he works for. The contract, of course, he will be writing the SAFER grant for us, but it also allows the write-up of 4 separate grants. So any 4 grants. So it'll be the SAFER grant, and then this time next year, just before we would have to renew, another SAFER grant process will come open. So he'll essentially write us 2 SAFER grants for this contract, and then any 2 other grants that we find, including other federal grants. And I think at this point, we've got the idea of already of what grants we're going to go after. We're in a place right now where we're going to have to start researching grant processes for replacing some of our communications equipment that's getting old and obsolete at this point. So in those grant processes and that financial burden is going to be drastic. So for what we're paying him, we should be able to get a significant return on that investment. So, and it's what they do specifically. They're not just a generic grant writer that writes grants. Their goal is just public safety grants for first responders. So I think they're very motivated and eager to kind of get to work on it. And plus, they've already written a grant for us, so that'll help them have the majority of the information they need for us already to get this grant off the road or off the ground in the next 14 days, which is what we have to do. So if anybody has questions, I can try to answer.
Perfect. Do we have any questions from the board then? Okay. Yes, Member David Tate.
Chief, I'm just thinking about the probability of receiving those SAFER grants and the financial burden that will relieve the township and the fire department. Is there an estimate of the type of cost we'd incur down the road if we didn't get those SAFER grants and needed more training and more equipment, more men?
It's kind of a hard thing to quantify at this point, because I think without the SAFER grant, I think
likelihood of growing the department the way we need to grow the department will be incredibly limited. Simply because that the SAFER grant allows for 3 years of us not having to pay for that personnel. So I think it would, if our first grant proposal is for 6 people, 6 firefighters, that's fantastic. It'll fund them for 3 years to give us that ability to maintain those 3 firefighters. We'll be able to, I guess, solidify a funding source for those extra 6, and then the ones we have. Otherwise, I don't think we've got the ability to grow the way we need to grow. I think it would be very, very hard without that time buffer there that it would give us to try to grow the department. And in terms of the other equipment, I think really we're at a place right now to where we've got to replace some equipment. We have to be able to grow our equipment in a way that it's absorbing that run load. So we have the personnel, right, to take care of the runs and the calls. We just have to make sure that our equipment is in the condition we need it to be in for them to adequately do that part of the job. So, and we've got some great equipment. I just want to make sure that we're maintaining that equipment to keep it great equipment. And I just think that at this point, with all the things that have changed, I just don't want to get to a place that we've fallen behind the ball where we've let something get way backed up. So the financial burden, if we don't get some of these grants, could be significant, because otherwise we're going to have to be shuffling money around to try to get things done like that. And I think that it's just a no-brainer thing for me. If we've got the ability to go after federal money, even if it's a small, I mean, I think the max we've seen has been a 10% match. So, I mean, if that could be incredibly significant. I mean, we're talking about replacing communications equipment that could be, if we had to go through and replace all of our communications equipment, we're talking almost $200,000. So a 10% match, if we had to do that, would be incredible. So the burden could be huge. And I really think that us being really diligent here just truly makes us, I guess, better stewards of the money that we have and the ability to make it stretch as far as we can. So.
Chief, do you have an idea as to when we would know about the outcome of the SAFER grant?
The SAFER grant closes in 14 or 15 days, and they generally start awarding the grants around June. So they do a couple award rounds. So they end up doing the first 2 rounds are very, very heavy, and then they take what money they have left and they try to stretch it as far as they can for like 3rd and 4th rounds. So I think the latest they award is August, September, but they start around June trying to get that money out. But there's always those agencies that win the award, but then don't have the ability to progress. So there's some folks that will fall back off, and so that money ends up getting picked up 3rd round, 4th round or so. So I would say they're going to start award around June.
Thank you, Chief. And then I see our trustee had a comment, so I'd be happy to cede some time your way. Trustee?
All right. Yeah. So, and let me lower my hand. I'm really bad about this. But I did want to say, so it's a little bit difficult, right, to quantify, as Chief Ford stated, because the decision when it comes to getting a SAFER grant, if we get the SAFER grant, then it will change the course of the decision-making process, right? So we wouldn't just be able to add 6 people next year and just immediately do it if we didn't have a SAFER grant. So, but if we were to do that, that would be about $600,000 plus if they were all firefighter 2 level additions to the department, between the perf and their salaries and benefits, etc. So I mean, it can be a pretty substantial impact on the funding for the township when it comes to their salaries and their benefits and stuff like that. Obviously, like, the way that I like to look at it is that the township will start seeing the reward quickly, but feel the financial impact later, that if we were just progressing and growing on a linear basis over the next few years. So my calculus brain says Riemann sum, and it goes back to, like, how do we calculate the benefit under this curve? But no, I mean, it would be a really substantial benefit to the township. Obviously, We're already planning on growing to be able to sustain that level of funding through the appeal process that we're getting started, which we're on hold on Bill's advice because we haven't seen any data from the from census tract stuff yet. So he told me to hold off a few more days and hopefully we'll get some stuff out before we start there. But that process is going to help us be able to pay for this if we're able to successfully appeal that. And that's where the SAFER grant allows us to move faster and grow without putting the impact on the township residents just yet. So.
Perfect. Other thoughts from any of our firefighters, any of our board members or other elected folks? Okay, seeing none, I would ask if we have a motion on the floor to close debate on our resolution 2022-7.
So moved.
Excellent. I'll second that. And so I will now seek unanimous consent for resolution 2022-7 to adopt the resolution and therefore enter into our contract with Greg Davis.
I vote aye on resolution 2022-7.
Excellent. We have our granted unanimous consent and have therefore adopted resolution number 2022-7. And now we've got a grant writer, and I love the forethought, of course. We're looking at this year, we're looking at next year's SAFER grant, and let's find a couple more. So, Chief, did you have a comment on that note?
I did, and I forgot to add something. The cool part about Greg's company is once we get rolling, Greg's company, he's going to come here to us and he's going to teach a grant writing class for our folks that we're going to be able to open up to other agencies around us, other people that are grant writers. He comes in, he teaches the course on those grants as well as the pathway to get some more of the federal grant money that's out there. So it's kind of a dual benefit for us. So we're paying him to write for, but he's going to give us the tools to be able to write more on our own. So I think that's really, really beneficial at the same time.
I love that. And then, Chief, did you say that we're going to go ahead and open up to other surrounding departments and other agencies nearby in the community?
Absolutely. When he comes in, we're going to put it out to everyone else and open it up. There's a fee associated with this course, but we can open it up to them and allow them to come as well and participate in the grant writing program, which there's a lot of need for it right now. So I think we'd be able to fill it up pretty easy.
Perfect. And then, Chief, also with that fee, is that something that's already encompassed in what we in the contract? There, trustee.
It'll be a separate fee, but it's kind of like a lot of other classes that we would host. If we can get so many people, he won't cost us anything to host the class. So it'll just be incumbent upon me to get it out to everybody to be able to make it free for us, and I don't think that'll be any problem at all.
Excellent. I love that. Again, we had a pause there on our continued education at the department, but I know this department for a number of years has been really strong in terms of training folks. So that's really good to see some return to some of that, I guess, some of our roots in that sense here in the more contemporary sense. But seeing no more comments on the aforementioned resolutions that we've passed, I will go ahead and move us on to our old business, which does have two different planks. We have our resolution, which was first of the year, something we've kept our eyes on. The trustee alluded to it earlier. Our resolution defining our township assistance guidelines and standards. I know David and I look forward to taking a peek at those. I think the trustee mentioned that he and Amy are working on them, and we should see them later on tonight. We, of course, have looked at adding a meeting, and we'll get into our upcoming meeting dates, but we've looked at, I believe, adding a meeting to make sure that this happens in the month of January. So with that in mind, I think we'll let resolution 2021 sit on the table for a moment, but go ahead and move on to our resolution 2022-4, which has been a little long in the tooth. Do we have a contract that's amiable to Bill Jones and the township, trustee?
So Bill told me that he would be able to get it to us by today, but he wasn't able to just yet. So I think I would go ahead and table that. I know that he's been more focused on the part about fixing our finances and making sure that he has a contract in place to get paid. His exact words are, "I know that you guys will get around to paying me." Yeah, so I would go ahead and table that for right now, but I'm still making sure that we get that there for him. So
He knows where to find us.
That's right. He also knows how to check our books and make sure we have money to pay the man. So, but we've obviously operated in good faith with Bill Jones for months, if not going into years now. So good to know there as well. We'll close our old business here. We'll go ahead and table both those resolutions, 1 and 4. And then we'll talk about our future meeting dates for 2022, which I now see the agenda needs to be amended, but that's good there.
Hey, Brendan, I think David wanted to add something up.
My apologies, David. I didn't see that. Go ahead, member.
Do we need a motion to table this?
We could probably use with a motion to table resolutions 2022-1, 2022-4. Do I see such a motion on the floor?
I so move.
Excellent. I will second that as well. And with that unanimous consent, we will table both those resolutions. Thank you so much, Member Tate. And then on that front, our regularly scheduled meetings that I see here listed, we've got our annual report coming on February 15th, and then also a meeting scheduled for March 15th. Trustee, I know obviously we've spoken out, and I know folks attending are aware, but do you want to kind of talk about that annual report briefly, and just let folks know, I guess maybe even how much time has gone in by several folks in order to try to make that resemble something accurate? Do you want to kind of speak to that briefly?
Yeah. So the annual report is something that, happens every year, the annual financial report. And so we go through and outline all the disbursements and expenses by fund, also township assistance, the number of applicants, the number of people that were accepted, the amount that we gave out, an estimate of the amount of financial aid that we provided by referrals to other agencies. There are a lot of pieces that go into the annual report. Now, if you are doing reconciliations on a monthly basis, then it shouldn't be that complicated a process to get those out. It's always you always have to make sure that you're tracking township assistance separately as well, and making sure that it's all reflected already in our system so that we are ready to roll when it comes to getting the annual report. Obviously, we weren't in that particular situation right now, so the annual report will encompass the previous trustees' last year in office, minus the last 5 days. And so we have been having to go through back and do monthly reconciliations starting in July. July through December, there were no reconciliations. We had a list of payments that we didn't know exactly what they were. So between Bill and Ms. Mulligan, they've been working countless hours, really, easily over 100 hours at this point, if you count all the time that they put into it throughout the different days, to make sure that those expenses are properly tracked, that we know what's going on there. They have had to go through and correct the funds out of which some of those transactions have come out of. I've mentioned earlier our township council was getting paid out of the incorrect fund. We're having to go through, there were expenses for fire department that came out of general. There were expenses from general fund that came out of fire department. So they're moving all of that to make sure that it's accurately reflected in the report, which is going to be a little bit challenging. I don't think that we'll have the most detailed, exact report when it comes to where it should have been coming out of the different line items. However, that's not on the current, it's not the responsibility of the incoming trustee to take care of the last trustee's actions when it comes to the finances. We're trying to get it as close as possible to reflect where it should be and make sure that going forward it's done correctly. But there's just so much work, and Bill has been finding mistakes going back as far back as January, really, when it comes to the reconciliations of the different months. So he's having to go through and make sure to correct everything. So it's a tough process. I would have liked to be able to get the annual report done quicker. I know Bill had originally estimated that we might be able to have it even by tonight, but there's just been so much work to do. And so he's still working on that, and we'll make sure to get that in on time for you guys. But it's been a long process, and I know we couldn't have done it without Bill's expertise, and we're really grateful for that. So that's another reason why it's important, that contract too, because I know that he's a great resource to the township, and he's been helping us out through all these different appeal processes and making sure that the township is up to speed on the alternatives that are available. So yeah, we'll just keep working on those, but it's going to take us a little bit longer to get those to you guys, and then we'll have to note transactions that are that we have issues with, and they're just there, right? You know, we don't know exactly what they may have been, or we are not sure if they were proper or whatnot, and that's something for SBOA to determine. But the work keeps going on, and next year's report will ideally look much nicer. So.
Perfect. Thank you for speaking to that, Trustee. Member David Tate.
Just quickly, Mr. Trustee, Amy and I have been working on the next fundraiser. It looks like we're going to still use Nelson's chicken. We actually sold out quicker. We upped our numbers reserved to like 625, and we sold out in something like 2 hours. So we're looking to have another successful fundraiser. The last comment, very small indeed, is I know that you and Mr. Biederman are looking to have the previous trustee return any and all township equipment.
Yeah, we're still missing a few pieces of equipment. There's a MacBook that's out there, as we understand it. There is a phone unaccounted for, the one that Mr. Ward used to have during his time at the department. Additionally, also his radio is unaccounted for, and his pager as well, and that's over $7,000 worth of equipment between those 3 or 4 pieces on the conservative side of the value of it. We also have a couple of, well, we have keys and stuff that are still important. A lot of those we've rekeyed stuff, so it's not as pressing, but we have keys to the inside drawers of the trustee's office, as well as a key. We have a key for a deposit box in or a safe box where the titles of some of the vehicles are being kept at Regions Bank. And so we need to get that, or else we might be charged $130 to change a key or whatnot. So it's it's a lot of work, and I'm really grateful for the work that folks have been doing, and the help that we've received, and people all around are being very gracious towards the township, given the circumstances.
Thanks, Trustee. Member David Tate, did you have another question or comment there? Good deal. And then a quick question on my end, Chief, with certain things missing, I know we have fuller roles than we had for a minute there. Do we have what we need? Are we able to scrounge together? And do you have the communications equipment you need and your folks need?
Yeah, we've actually been incredibly lucky. We were able to, just because somebody had left, there was enough equipment there that I was able to get a radio and get the stuff that I needed. But the stuff that she has, unfortunately, because my radio's got also law enforcement channels in it, we had to have that radio disabled. So we had to pay for that to where that wasn't something that we had access to, that someone didn't have access to, whomever that may be, wherever it may have gone. So again, it's more of a thorn in the side than it is anything. We've got the equipment, we've got the ability to do the job still, but just one of those things that would have simplified the process, of course. So.
That brings to mind, I wonder if the township should consider looking to recoup some of those costs from the previous administration. But I suppose that's a can to let loose another time. With that,
Yeah,
again,
the township's working on that.
Perfect. Thank you, Trustee. I appreciate that. That's definitely another good vote of confidence. with that in mind, I'd open it up again to any of our folks here for final questions for our fire folks or our trustee, member David Tate in particular. Any other things to highlight here before we kind of conclude for the evening?
Once again, I just reiterate the really quick and hard work that our current trustee has put in has been exemplary. And that means, in addition to Mr. Jones, who has always stood behind us and with us, and the current firefighters that have come back to home. And I'm very impressed by what has happened in a short amount of time. I'm glad to have him back.
Excellent. With that in mind, again, I will move to adjourn our meeting tonight at 7:02 p.m. Do I have a second on the floor?
Second.
Perfect. Then we'll just consider that passed with unanimous consent. Thank you so much for everyone coming out this evening. Thank you so much to our fire staff who have been no doubt working hard at it. Happy to be back to it, I suspect, with that big smile. So thank you to everyone on tonight, and this will conclude our Wabash Township Board meeting for the evening. Have a good night, folks, and be safe.
Thank you. And Brandon, I'll bring the Christmas gift over because you've still got your Christmas tree up.
Thank you. I love it. I feel like I have until March. I'm just going to push that.
And a quick reminder to folks. Oh, a quick reminder too that we probably will meet on January 31st. Will be the likely meeting date here, and so we'll post a notice for that as well and let folks know. So.
Perfect. So keep your eye out for a notice, folks, and obviously that'll be on social media, and to look for your local paper. All right. Have a nice evening. Thank you again.